whether you are a man or a woman, please know that any human being who is afflicted with physical and emotional pain does, emotional heart does feel pain. And so when I saw that is somebody's daughter. And that somebody's daughter perhaps could be dating somebody's son. And you can imagine what the implication of what she's saying. And what worried me is not even what she said, it's the comments thereafter of very many young ladies joining in and saying it is true. Then if you're thinking that you're going to get into an association with a man, then harm him because you disagree, then in the first place you ought not even to think that you can live with another human being. It's good to just forget about it, stay where you are born. But you know, this is now not even feminism. It's gone beyond even toxic feminism. It's now misandrism, you know, hatred of men. Because what is causing this kind of anger and outpouring? And so boldly, publicly to say that I can harm a man. And in the same weekend, we had a KDF soldier who was killed by his wife. Okay, we had a man in Makueni who was also killed by his wife. But what is even more worrying is that in this country we have institutions that are supposed to talk about gender equality, sexual and gender-based violence. SGBV is not a discussion about violence against women. It's a discussion, or it should be an agenda on discussion about all forms of violence against any gender, or even people who are even cross-gender. Because when you hurt a man, when you hurt a woman, you are hurting a human being. When you even conceive, conspire, contemplate that you can hurt another human being, then you do not deserve to even be with other human beings. That is my point. And it is shocking, you know, and you can see a lot of support and outpouring and saying, yes, we can do it. We can harm men. And then others justifying and saying, okay, it is good, you know, because men have always been doing it on women. So now it is time for us to do it. So we are talking about vigilance. This cycle, how far can you go? You know, we have children. We are bringing up children. If I am worried for my son or for my daughter, and this is something I like to tell even the young people debating this debate becomes very good when you have nothing, when you're not a father. But the day you become a father, you start, any violence against a girl affects you because you have a father to a daughter. When you see a woman justifying violence against boys or men, then again it impacts on you because you have a son. You have a son. Yes. And you'd want, there is no parent that would want their son or daughter to live a life of pain and a life of suffering because they've been hurt by another human being. It's not proper. We ought to be talking about a society where there is tolerance, where there is acceptance, where there is kuvumiliana, and there is no problem that is mountainous. Okay, for those who say they are in marriage, I even saw a lady saying that she was going to pretend to say that she will commit suicide. Yeah. Or hurt herself so that the man can be blamed. You can imagine. Yeah. Why would you do that? Very sad, yeah. And
you saw the violence that also happened over the weekend. We lost a KDF officer who was... Are we raising vampires and all that? And I think the biggest concern that we've seen is that the lethargy in which we've addressed this conversation, unlike the way we addressed the conversation earlier about some other boys who were talking on radio about a case that happened about a victim that we saw. And that's what really bothers me. The fact that I saw the people arguing was saying, why are you not standing for yourself? Well, some people are saying, okay, women, we stood with you. You castigated us, some of us who had some differing opinion. Why is that at this point you guys are not speaking for the man? They're saying, you guys, you can speak for yourselves. You have mobile phones, you have internet. Why are you not fixing yourselves? And the question is, Captain, how long are you going to have this ping pong? That when it's about you, we should care, we should not care. When it's about this other person, we should not care about this other person.
You know, it's what I have said about setting the agenda on this whole issue of SGBV. And my starting point is always the institutions of the state. Yeah. We have the Kenya National Human Rights Commission. We have the Gender and the National Gender and Equality Commission. First get human rights is about human beings, and human beings are either female or male, or they can be transgender, because we have people with both male and female gender characteristics. Now, it means that then those national, especially perhaps the National Gender and Equality Commission, apparently they are very silent. These people are paid heavily by our taxes. These are the people who should be setting the agenda. And the clarion call should be that violence against one is violence against all. Okay? And this is where we are getting it wrong. And we are not getting it right here. Because the institutions that are supposed to set the national agenda to address this issue, paid by public resources, are simply mute. They are very quiet. And you see, to bring a matter to forward for debate, there is what you call institutional support and institutional framework. That's why those institutions exist. The Kenya National Human Rights Commission, as well as the National Gender and Equality Commission. I would expect that the leadership in those institutions would be up and about to speak about it. Even once talk over the weekend, we had a lady who bit off the ear of a police officer.
Yeah.
You know? Imagine. And there is no comment. There is no comment. This is a police officer, a law enforcement officer, enforcing the law. He's not doing it at his behest. He's employed by the state to keep us safe and secure. He asks a question of a lady, and the lady decides to be violent on him and severes his ear. Now, everybody is very quiet. There's no talk about it. This is a problem. This seems to be a problem in this country. That when it comes to the issues of one gender, we are very quick to ask for not just sympathy, for action. But when it is the other gender, we all go mute, and I am having a problem with that, because then we are lacking even to express even empathy. I would expect the National Gender and Equality Commission to even say sorry. We are sorry. We feel the pain for the man who lost his ear. We feel pain for the man who lost his life, because a human being is a human being. And ukiumwa maskio, it doesn't matter whether you are a man or a woman. The pain is the same.
Yes.
There's
Maskio ni maskio.
Maskio ni maskio. And this is the debate we should be having. Yes.
Okay, all right. We are waiting for Dr. BITANGE NDEMO to join us so that we can have the conversation. Mema naona amesema late, I hope not so far. Karibu sana, hujachelewa sana. Acha niangalie all the way from Rex Totola. As I'm following live from Mara, Narok. Asante sana. Thank you so much, guys, from Mara, Narok. Solai Arab TikTok and some morning bros. Stop learning Kenya. Haya. Halei Kulei and some morning we talk watching from Nakuru. Enoch Kiprotich Korir watching from Kangoro, Embu County. Young Zangva Kantal, good morning from Mandera. Jared Rono anasema ndio. Haya, ana bwana nyinyi mkanda siege, watu wa KDF naona mkanda siege, poleni sana. Agri pia another hashtag loan Kenya, we go to street loading. Haya, naona Martin Kipkiru anasema good morning team tackle. Musa JB sauti, kuna sauti ipo. Kwani Skipchirchir tuned in from county 001. Ulienda nini Mombasa kaka? Migalangat, is this Collins Wanderi? Ni huyo kabisa, that's Collins Wanderi. Eric Mwangi, CEO Maridadi Motors. Our brother, leo you're missing in action. Tumekupa nafasi kidogo ulisema uende ujenge nchi. Nashukuru sana. Good morning team tackle, greetings from team Maridadi. Pass my regards to my seniors, Captain Wanderi and Professor Bitange. Waambie ni mwatolea kofia. Haya, asante. Justin Asiago following from the conversation. It is timely. Thank you. Chris CR tuned in from 029. Simon Saimo. This is the advice full of wisdom. Asante. Memana Kwan Jola Rama, Chairman Diaspora Edition. Good morning. Anasema good morning to Kiptoa Emmanuel, serikali ya nyonga wanyonge kwa kinyongi moja tu. Haya, poleni sana. Shadrack Tuwe tuned in from Eldoret. Kiprop Vic Ibito. Good morning to you, Titus Komora. Good morning from Kitala. Asante sana. Thank you so much our partners Maridadi Motors. Maridadi Motors, that's on Kiambu Road opposite Ridgeways Total. Wanakupa nafasi ya kuweza kuleta gari yako kwa bei nafuu zaidi. When you import Maridadi Motors, you can save up to 300,000 Kenyan shillings when you import directly from Maridadi Motors. Also Maridadi Motors gives you an opportunity to invest, that is import to sell. And that you invest your money and you get 1% per annum. You'll get your annual money per annum. And also Maridadi Motors Sacco gives you an opportunity to purchase your car in the easiest way possible. You can save for 6 months, alafu unaleta gari yako 50% deposit, alafu nyingine unaweza kupata ukiendesha gari yako. Maridadi Motors, inasema kwamba changing your status, is it shifting your status, trust the process. Ndio zinakuambia kwamba you can get the best cars at best prices. Best cars at best prices only at Maridadi Motors. Thank you so much for working with us at this square in Eldoret. Thank you so much also being our partners. Watu wa kungarisha watu, mableza hivi, makoti na masuti. Kama uko na harusi, kimbia pale Maridadi, kimbia pale this square in Eldoret Ketia building, third floor. Wanaweza kupiga luku fresh sana. Hata nione kama daktari Bitange Ndemo ameweza kuungana na sisi. Bado haya, tunarudi kuzungumzia mambo ya IMF, Captain.
Bitok,
Wakenya wameamua.
I've seen Kenyans very angry. I actually joined the debate in the IMF page and made my comment, and the responses to my comment are not very palatable. Nimeambiwa kwamba mimi ninaunga mkono wanyonyaji, wala wanaonyonga wanyonge. But my response to this is this. I know very well that, and I want to tell Kenyans this, it's good to express that anger and angst. It is very, very important, because whereas the government may not care, I also want to tell Kenyans that the World Bank and the IMF are very sensitive to bad public relations. They are not institutions that are headed by people who don't care. They are headed by people who know that the credibility of the business they are in and what they do is subject to question by people who have the knowledge and people who have interest in what they are doing. So they are very sensitive to bad PR, just like any international institution. And this is the beauty of it, that the expression of angst by Kenyans is in itself. The expression by Kenyans that they are not happy with the way that the IMF, or rather the conditions upon which Kenya is borrowing the money, is a good thing, because it raises to the question, governance and political governance is essentially about management of public resources. Underline the word, the phrase public resources. There is nobody who goes into politics to manage their business. They're going to manage resources that are collected or raised from the public. So it means, therefore, that if you get that opportunity, what you're supposed to be to do as a political governance is to ensure that those resources are managed in a manner that is beneficial for the public. And this is the question I'm liking about this, because it means Kenyans are beginning to question the political leadership and the public administration in this country as to the use of public resources. And definitely, I know, because Bitok, in 2011, I was in a meeting of government officers with IMF and World Bank officials who had visited seeking certain information from the Kenya government. And at that time, we denied them that information. And we told them no, because the country was financing 95% of its budget. So if you are financing 95% of your budget, of the budget from local resources, it means that you're basically self-reliant. And if you are self-reliant, it means you will not agree to be told what to do and how to manage your country. And this is the point. So I would also tell Kenyans this, that, and I want them to listen very carefully, that politics is about influence. Successful politics is power. And power is fundamentally about economics, about resources, management of resources. Who collects what and what goes where. Now, the moment you elect people into office, you're giving them the ability as politicians to even borrow in your name, to even risk revenue from whatever source, either from domestic sources or from foreign sources, on your behalf. Now, if they borrow loans, it means you will pay for it. So if these politicians are determining where these resources go, then it becomes very important for us as Kenyans to have a serious inquisition as to who we elect into office. Because this person, if they determine that the resources collected, either from locally or from foreign sources, will be used to pay salaries, their own salaries, then it means we will be paying to finance a very small section of the community. And then basically, we are almost doing that. Everybody's business now in Kenya is down, but there is no politician or public administrator who has taken a pay cut, or is there? There is none. So we are continuing to finance their lavish lifestyles at our expense, because if the money to pay them is borrowed, either from domestic debt, either from domestic sources or from foreign sources, we'll pay for it painfully, and not just for 1 year. We'll pay for it for generations to come. And this is the question, and this is the debate that we Kenyans should be having. That the fellow you elect, as governor, the fellow you elect as senator, the fellow you elect as member of the National Assembly, the fellow you elect as the member of county assembly, the person you vote for as president and deputy president, have a direct correlation with your livelihood. Because let me explain this to people. Today, if Kenya is said, and it is true that Kenya has borrowed 250 billion from the IMF, if we were to pay that loan at 5 interest, because that is usually the argument of getting foreign debt, that if you get foreign debt, you're not going to have the government competing with merchants to borrow from domestic sources. So it means that Kenyans can still get loans at cheap rates. But let me break this down to people. If you borrow 250 billion today, then tomorrow, at the rate of 110 shillings per dollar, then tomorrow the dollar rate increases by 1 shilling to 111. It means that you will be paying the loan with an additional interest of 2.3 billion. Yes, that's what Kenyans should understand. That any single increase of the shilling by 1 shilling increases the loan to be paid by 2.3 billion. Now, if you have the shilling then fluctuating and going by 5 shillings, you can imagine, you can see the impact. And then it means also that we are a net importer as a country. We depend on imports. And therefore, we have to pay for these imports using hard currency, euros, dollars, pounds, and the yen. If our shilling loses value, any single shilling we lose value, it means that we've got to pay for higher commodities. And if the state is competing with merchants to increase dollar demand and also get dollars from the financial markets, it means that if you are a commercial bank, you do not want to sell dollars to Reja Reja. You would rather sell to the government because you are assured of immediate payment. And the government, mainly, the ordinary citizens will negotiate with you. They will want to tell you that usiniuzie 115, sell to me at 114. But does government ever negotiate? The answer is no. So that is why you see increased dollar demand puts pressure on the shilling, because it means if you got loaned 250 billion, but by increase of 1 shilling to the dollar, you are now paying 252.3 billion. You can see the impact it has on the economy and the impact it has on the cost of imports and what we call industrial and capital goods. And this is what now depresses an economy. Yes, that's the trouble we have. That the loan may look very cheap in terms of interest rate, but if it is borrowed using a hard currency, dollars, pounds, yen, and other international currency, it means that we're going to pay for it very expensively. Yes.
All right. Dr. Ojwang seems to disagree with you here, and he's saying, Dr. Duncan Ojwang, Dr. between Kenya and IMF, who is developing. I am shocked to hear the guests say that the Brentwood Institution have ethics and cares about their world countries. Where does he get the example gleaning into the history, starting from structural arrangement program?
Now, apparently, I don't know whether Dr. Ojwang was what he was doing in the 90s when the structural adjustment programs were imposed on Kenya by the World Bank and IMF. And the resultant hemorrhage, of staff, of public servants from the public service. It used to be called unapewa handshake. The handshake then that time, it means that you were being chased out of employment, or rather, you were being retrenched and given some. So sasa haiko ya kuingia kwa serikali. It meant you are leaving the public service. And a lot of people's livelihoods were destroyed. Young civil servants were forced to get out. So when he says that the IMF and the World Bank are not sensitive to bad PR, he is wrong. Because even at that time, those institutions were sensitive to the sentiment expressed by many people in African countries and Asian countries, particularly the Asia-Pacific region and the Southern Hemisphere countries, where a lot of people had expressed a lot of anger on the way, in the manner in which the SAPs were carried out, which led to loss of jobs, and they almost led to collapse of banking institutions, because it meant if a banking institution had, for example, lent people who were in the public service and then they were retrenched, it meant that that institution would not then realize the money that had been borrowed and realize back its capital. And so, therefore, to say that they are not, I know, and that's why I've said that it is not the IMF and the World Bank that is developing Kenya. The people who are in charge of the management of public resources in this country, underline, is the politicians. And I keep repeating that political governance is about management of public resources. It's not about shouting around. Power is deciding what taxes are collected, how much can be collected from the citizens, how much can be borrowed, and how it is applied. If you apply your taxes to pay recurrent expenditure, to pay salaries, if you apply loans to pay salaries, and you're not using it to develop systems and programs that can spur economic growth, then you are simply killing the economy.
And that's my point. As we say, as we talk about IMF and World Bank not being sensitive or not being sensitive to public PR, is it sensitive to the needs of a country? Because it's very clear that, I mean, if I'm giving you money, Wanderi, and every day I'm sinking money into you, and I'm not seeing any results coming out, is it sensitive to what it means to the people of that country? Because, I mean, financial partners should also be sensitive to what the money is doing to the people that reside in the country. Right now, Kenyans are coming up and they're actually yelling and screaming about what's going on in the country. Is IMF and World Bank being sensitive to what the Kenyans are speaking out?
What I said is that the IMF, the Bretton Woods institutions, are sensitive to bad PR, bad public relations, bad publicity. They are sensitive to that. But the banks and other institutions led people on the ability to pay. Now, let me get to the word ability to pay. How does a government pay its loans? The government pays its loans by mobilizing revenue from local sources. That is by taxing the citizens. Now, who is deciding how much taxes we pay? Is it the IMF or the World Bank? It is our members of the National Assembly and the Senate. And therefore, you know, for somebody to think that the World Bank and the IMF will be sensitive to that, that is lying to themselves. You see, the IMF has for a long time led a debate known as the energy subsidy reform. Energy subsidy reform. And let me just bring Kenyans to perspective on this. Energy subsidy reform has been touted as a panacea to dealing with issues of energy, which is a key component to industrialization and manufacturing. And everybody in Kenya here complains about the cost of power, electric power, and the cost of fuel, because it's energy. And one of the things that raised the cost of fuel in this country is the imposition of the VAT on the final product. That is the final product to the end consumer. And you know, it raised a lot of issues. And when it raised a lot of issues, the government of Kenya reduced the VAT rate from 16% to 8%, but only for a time. This thing of energy subsidy reform, I have been following this debate, and not only following it, but also learning and joining the IMF institution for training on energy subsidy reform, where I have a number of certificates. And I know that whereas the intention is very good, because it's supposed to ensure that the rich who consume a lot of fuel are not benefiting from the low cost of fuel and energy in in a manner that then defranchises or disadvantages the poor masses who have to pay for the fuel at the same rate as the rich people. Now, this is the whole issue, BITOC, that the energy subsidy reform touted by the IMF has not been very kind to the economies of developing countries. And we cannot pretend that it is very beneficial to us. But at the same time, we cannot also be blind to the fact that the IMF and the World Bank are financial institutions, and they lend money to make they are in business to make money. So if you can pay the loan, they will lend you. Yes, and a government only needs to demonstrate that it is able to raise resources locally to pay for the loan by taxing more. And you can see, you remember the words of the new president of Tanzania, that she told the Tanzania Revenue Authority officials that you're using more brute force than intelligence to collect taxes. That seems to be the situation in Kenya, that as long as the government can use brute force to collect taxes, then IMF and the Bretton Woods and the World Bank will continue to lend to us.
Right. Wataendelea kutupea pesa ikiwa tunalipa ama hatuwezi lipa. And I'm glad I'm seeing Dr. BITANGE NDEMO has joined us on the other side of the studio. We're happy to see him. Naona atarudi kwa video shortly, alafu tunaweza kumproduce. But the question is, Magufuli kicked out IMF from Tanzania. Kibaki kicked out IMF from Kenya at the time when he took over the country.
Yes.
That is the time when Kenya needed loans more than it needs right now, because that's the time Kibaki was inheriting an economy that was almost collapsing under the rule of Kanu and Moi.
Yes.
Inherits a country that needs finances more than what Uhuru Kenyatta is dealing with this today. Why is it that Kibaki still developed the country without the IMF? And right now we're finding we're really struggling with developing the country without the loans from World Bank and other financial partners.
Can I tell you why, BITOC?
Do we just take because it's available?
I was in government when Mwai Kibaki forced out the IMF from this country. In fact, they had a very big headquarters, plus the World Bank, at Upper Hill. But they were forced to scale down their operations in Kenya because Kenya was no longer the girl who needed to borrow money every other minute. Kenya was no longer an attractive girl to them. And how did that happen? Number one, the government of Mwai Kibaki and the people who were in charge at that time introduced austerity measures. And there is something called the short-term or the medium-term expenditure framework of government. What is this that government wants to spend on? Where do you want to put this money? Do you want to put this money to finance the lavish lifestyle of public officials? And that is something that was not happening in the government of Mwai Kibaki. Let me give you good examples. How much money is used, for example, to finance people to attend seminars outside the country, to have foreign trips? BITOC, do you know that I can confidently tell people that sometimes as a public officer, I needed not to ever go to my bank to access anything that I have earned from the salary, because I could as well get all these resources by attending meetings and earning per diem. And that is a fact. And that is what public officials thrive on. And as long as people continue to earn a lot of allowances, especially to earn a lot of allowances for traveling, then we will get into a financial rut.
All right.
And that is one thing that the government of Mwai Kibaki was able to control. First, you reduce unnecessary movement of public officials. You cancel. The late President Magufuli cancelled foreign trips, saving his country $4.5 billion in 1 year. He cancelled those lavish celebrations, in the country. I mean, but how much, if you look at the amount of money spent for public officials to be, to be pampered in office. Why does a cabinet minister in this country need to move around with his official car and with 2 outriders with sirens all over? Why? This country is not at war.
Okay.
This country is not at war. So we must reduce the cost of political governance and public administration in this country, because everybody takes tune. And people have always said, oh, parliamentarians are not paid much. If parliamentarians begin to drive vehicle, I mean, why would you be driving a 5-liter vehicle inside the urban center where the roads are good? Why? Somebody needs to explain to me why a cabinet minister in Kenya needs a Prado. That person can even ride in a Toyota NZE. Yes, because they are not. That's not their office. It's public office.
We had the VW Passat at a time.
And can I also tell people, Kenyans, that part of the reason the Ethiopian economy grew very quickly is that at one point, the Toyota Corolla EE90 was the official car of public officers. No public officer was allowed to ride a car beyond 1500 cc. And I remember, to his credit, at one point, President Uhuru Kenyatta had at one point instituted such measures, but after some time they were forgotten. And
but he's president now, probably could do more. I'm saying Dr. BITANGE NDEMO has joined us on the other side of the studio. Good morning to you, sir. How are you, Dr. Please unmute yourself.
Good morning. Good morning, sir. The era of unmute and muting.
It's a time of mute and mute. Zima zimua. It's an interesting era to be in. It's good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
Najua watu wamekusubiri sana kidogo. Najua pia mambo ya technology, ingia, toka, ingia, ndio link ama link haijafika, at times can take a lot of time to coordinate. But we're happy to see you.
You went off.
You can hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Right. Nilikuwa nasema, unajua mambo watu wamekusubiri sana. Ni kwanza mambo ya technology, ndio hiyo link imefika ama haijafika. At times can take a lot of time, but we're happy to have you finally.
Thank you so much.
Kenyans have been asking for you for the longest time, and I had promised them that I'll hunt you down and ensure that I get to bring you on board.
Thank you.
All right, so I know many Kenyans know you, but I'd want to give you an opportunity very briefly to introduce yourself. Then we probably dig into the matters of the day before you run away.
Yes, my name is BITANGE NDEMO. I teach at the University of Nairobi School of Business, and also work with a lot of young people around entrepreneurship, innovation, and several women groups. That is what I do.
Okay. And you forgot to mention that you're once a PS ICT.
You asked me what I do.
All right, asante sana daktari. And I mean, there's something quite interesting about you, unlike other public servants that you're seeing, as Captain Wanderi was talking about. The toppings of power can come with a lot of moral compromise in terms of how people handle their public offices. And a lot of people, you find that they take their public offices into their public space. You know, ofisi ya serikali, somehow you find that people transition within the space, and the arrogance that comes with it and the entitlement that comes with it has not gotten into you. How have you been able to maintain a level head even in the midst of all these other things that could push you to compromise on yourself?
Well, I've always said, when you climb to the top, you must make sure that every rung that you stepped on still remains with you. Otherwise, you can be on that ladder and you keep on destroying the rungs below. And then when you are asked to go down and there is no other rung to step on, you would collapse. And I knew from the beginning that this thing would come to an end. So I need to maintain my friends. And that's why I did an article that it's actually a very difficult thing. The second day when you leave office, you need to go back to your roots, your friends, and be sober with it. And that's how I've lived. Maybe it's because throughout my life, I've driven Volkswagens and I don't fancy an expensive thing like Captain says. I still drive a VW around, and I feel good about it.
Okay. That's interesting. So it digs deeper into your personal principles. It's not even a matter of a character that you've earned. It's about a personal principle that you've had all through public service.
You just have to know that a tree never grows to the sky. And the same is for you, that you, even if you are promoted today, tomorrow, there is a ceiling where you reach and come down, and the others come to move up the ladder. So you just have to anticipate that, and then make a reconciliation on what you need to do to be relevant in society. And that's what we all think about. You must be relevant. But if you left those whom you leave behind, and you have no links, then you end up being depressed.
And we've seen a lot of public servants, and Kenyans have always talked about this, that power is very transient. It moves very quickly, even before you know it, under your feet. And we've had a lot of public servants who have gotten into it, so much into it, they imagine that they will never leave the offices. What is the contrast between being in such a powerful office and tomorrow being a citizen? What is the you mentioned that when you left public service, the next day your life totally changed. The friends that you had were no longer checking on you, your phone was going silent and all that. What would you tell public servants? And I saw also the conversation was also the former AG talked about the same thing. What is the contrast between public office and being a citizen? And what did you tell someone who is sitting in a public office today and feels like the world moves around them?
You actually can moderate that, because the moment you are appointed, everybody calls you, congratulations, but not everybody has good intentions. Most people have intentions to ask, to seek favors, to do things that you probably would not want to do. And that's why they would hang around you. And once you leave, then they have no interest in that. So if you know that in advance, and if you have certain objectives, like I did, I had objectives in my head with the minister now for health, that let's change this thing. And what do we need to change? And the following day of my appointment to the office was to talk to people who are at the front line, those who are young people in ICTs. I started asking them, what exactly do you need to change this sector? And that's how the issue of first do infrastructure. And the way Wanderi was talking about, we knew there was no money, so we sought to build the cable using a public-private partnership, which worked very well and transformed the country. We didn't spend so much, but most then World Bank wanted to do easy. They wanted us to borrow the money, put together, and then do as a regional portion. When we asked President Kibaki, he said, this is the best option, go for it. We actually went for it. So you need the first day of your appointment to get to the people who matter in that sector if you want to make change. If you are a minister for agriculture, go to the farmers, ask them, what are the problems? How can I solve these problems in a much broader sense? Then you begin to deal with the reasons why you were hired to that office in the first place. But you have to be very strong, because many people would keep you in that office, coming to tell you the problems of the farmers and how they can solve it on your behalf. Those are what we call cartels. If you get into that, you are in big trouble.
Okay. That's an interesting to note. Now, we're having a conversation today about the IMF, and you served in a government that has shown its back to IMF and also international financial partners, that is the IMF and World Bank. And the conversation that the Kenyans are having today, we had a petition that was signed yesterday that's still circulating. Even the mainstream media were covering it. And Kenyans are saying, stop loaning Kenya. Stop giving money to Kenya. Kibaki's government has been in record as a government that's operated with little credit from foreign funds. And right now we are struggling with a country that the president keeps taking money from IMF. He sought another loan to fight COVID-19. And Kenyans are coming up in arms. As a public servant that you've operated in a streamlined government institutions, what's your feeling? What's your general feeling about the wrath and the anger of Kenyans? Is this justified?
Well, I did an article and said I think we need to stop borrowing and begin to look inwards. And when it happens like that, even in your family, at your home, when things become very difficult, you don't go to the bank. You cut spending. You stop, if you are driving leisurely, you stop leisure drive. If there are some renovations you wanted to do to the house, you stop it. Because the times are very difficult right now because of the pandemic. But what we are doing is that at a very difficult moment, we are talking about funding a referendum, which is not necessary because we just came out of the constitutional changes in 2010. We talk about very large projects. One of the things I remember in Kibaki's time is that Kibaki reduced the borrowing, local borrowing. Actually, the banks were on the street. They had small desks. That's when terminologies like Mukopo Asalo, because they wanted to lend. Government competes with the people in terms of borrowing. Government wins because they will pay. If they don't have, they will print and pay you. But then those who suffer are simple citizens who are working so hard to make ends meet. So if we wanted to grow this economy, the first thing we should have looked at, who creates jobs? 95% of the jobs are created by SMEs. Then you don't tax SMEs. Like the tax now we have on SMEs, on actually micro, on everybody. It's called the, I think revenue or the tax with the 1% tax, turnover tax. You don't go there because they are the ones who create jobs. You should give them the best opportunity to succeed and hire people, because that's where everybody works now in this country. That's number one. Number two is that the national government needs to cut down on spending. That's what Captain was talking about. You need to cut spending, period. But what do you see? You see so many members of parliament spending lots of money in committees, which we have never seen the results. We don't have what you call key performance index for members of parliament. So they shout about KEMSA, but you never hear what happened afterwards, which means such meetings are unnecessary if they are not meant just to provide allowances. So we need to have a structured way that, say, members of parliament meet. They meet once a week or once every 2 weeks, go through an agenda, just like any other board, but not randomness here to shout this has happened, we come this. Then you end up finding they are the ones who are there in terms of doing business. So we are being taken around corners. So citizens must rise up. If it is something we need to change in the constitution, we need a key performance index for parliament, key performance index for those in leadership, so that we know what they are going to achieve. It is very difficult to govern anywhere in the world when we don't know the underpinning, like, the Americans, when they went to the elections, you actually know Trump is an extreme conservative capitalist then you know the other ones, they are more liberal with respect to that. There is no African government you can explain a leader. You don't know whether Museveni is a conservative African or a capitalist or a socialist. At least Nyerere stuck to his guns, even though he failed. But he stuck to his guns. You could predict what would happen in Uganda. Right now, the entire Africa, you cannot predict what next would happen in Congo because the guy wakes up and makes a decision. This borrowing comes because we don't have any ideological underpinning of what we do. If we had, then we would begin to understand that the reason why he's doing it, this is a capitalist and these are the projects he's headed to. This is how they would impact. But a socialist who would not look for the money from there would focus on local and encourage people to raise more money. So these are the problems we have. Even as we move to 2022, we have no clue of all the top leaders that we have. We don't know whether they would become communist when they come to the office, socialist or capitalist. That is very key for citizens to make decisions. That's very, very key for citizens. That is what the British used to elect the guy who is in the office now, because they feared the opposition was more extreme socialist and the policies he was advocating. Right now, we don't know who can protect the employees in their workplace, who can protect business people. Those are the problems we need to clarify as citizens and get proper governments in the days to come.
Okay. Now, there's also something, and even before you go that, I want you to advise the president on what probably needs to be done. You've talked about local borrowing, which clearly then has swept off the credit from the local banks that ensure that even the business people cannot access credit for business expansion and all that. And these are the taxpayers that are not trading. If you were to talk to the president today, and I would be surprised that if you guys don't talk, unless you say that you don't, what would you tell him to do in regards to these loan borrowings and money coming from outside? People are arguing that it's good for development. He has told us that the economy is growing at 7%. You'll also tell us when you say that an economy is growing at 7%, who is it growing for? You know? Then the question is, all this money that keeps coming in, what would you tell the president? What could he do today that could turn around every other aspect of the economy?
We are losing competitiveness, especially in manufacturing, and it's because of taxes. What has happened is all manufacturers in Kenya shifted to Uganda. Kenya used to have a positive, used to export more to Uganda than they exported into Kenya. Yeah. Then all manufacturers moved and created Kenya as a distribution centers. That's how our manufacturing dropped from 14% of GDP to 7%. We need to incentivize manufacturers to remain in the country so that you create jobs. We need to encourage SMEs to begin to grow. For them to grow, for the SMEs to grow from one micro to small to medium, there must be policy intervention. The policy intervention is that we should not be importing cheap products from other parts of the world and compromising local manufacturing. That's what every country does. In fact, they put tariffs on some of the things that we can produce locally so that we bring back manufacturing, so that most people can work. And when you have more people working in industry, you have less people selling things that they cannot sustain their livelihood on the streets. That's a direct relationship. If those people had jobs working, manufacturing, exporting, and doing whatever, we should have grown our manufacturing to 20%. Manufacturing is one of the Agenda 4, but there are no incentives to make it function the way we wanted it to function. By protecting what you have, by growing what we don't have so that we begin to move up the ladder, we have an opportunity because China is losing the low-end manufacturing to India. That's how India is coming up. That's our opportunity also. We should have begun to produce some of those things. Compare Kenya and Senegal. Senegal did not go to buy the ventilators. They used technology to 3D print them and supply them to hospitals. They looked for cheaper testing kits. What did we do in Kenya? We are very expensive. You pay 8,000 to test COVID. It's not once, you test it several times. We should have looked at a much cheaper solution, just like other African countries or other countries, so that you have manufacturing local to create jobs. Without jobs, you just have people who are disorganized. You can't organize them because manufacturing has gone into disarray. What would change Africa is we focus more to industrialize and leverage technology to improve manufacturing, because the technologies are there to help us do things that we would never have done before. This is what I would say. Let's go back to the basics, create industry. If we had 4 industries in every county, there would be less people moving to urban centers. And then there is greater opportunity for you to begin to manage as a country. Right now, it is impossible to do it because everybody thinks the jobs are in Nairobi. You have too many people in the city, and that's how you get into shanties and other things.
All right. There's something you mentioned, and I would want to ask the question before I throw it to Captain Wanderi to also fill in on what maybe I would want to hear from you. You've talked about blueprints and you've talked about the principles of leadership. If we know Dr. BITANGE NDEMO today, we know what he stands for or what he is bound to do when he's in office. You also mentioned about the Big Four agenda. There's also the Vision 2030 that was brought in by Kibaki, where you served in government. There is one of the Big Four, one of the Vision 20 that was the Silicon Valley, that's in Kansas City. Even before you go to Kansas City, there is the issues of a blueprint in governance. We had Vision 2030. Then when Jubilee came in, they started another vision. You know, we are all living in the same country. We have one Vision 2030. We are not yet in 2030. A new government comes in and gives us another blueprint of Big Four agenda. Sir, do you think Africa suffers from the disconnect of vision?
Exactly, we have a problem, but I don't think the Agenda 4 is any difference from Vision 2030, because Vision 2030, we were talking about value addition, manufacturing, and that is what was crystallized by Uhuru's government. The approach that has been taken was wrong because Treasury began to tax and the manufacturers moved away. Manufacturers, every country does incentives to make them produce here such that you create jobs locally. The workers are the ones who pay. Always you have seen income tax from employees is the largest in terms of, now when you begin to tax people for manufacturing here and making their conditions very difficult, then you have a problem. Then we have another problem here. This one, I have to explain it because I don't want to be misunderstood. The Western world comes and says, we must protect the environment. Yeah, we must protect it. I agree 100%. Africa does not contribute to global carbon emissions at all. I mean, we don't have smokes here from here to be called that. Then they find things called NEMA. NEMA shuts 10 factories and 6,000 people, 60,000 people lost jobs in closing those factories. Number two, we go and say we are banning the plastics. Then everything we import from outside has plastics. So the plastic issue, we had begun to sort it out by creating costs out of plastics. All we should have said is an incentive for young people to collect any plastic paper and take it to recycling where they make those posts. No other country has stopped producing plastics. We closed it down. 120,000 jobs went off the air. How do you do that without thinking about their livelihood? And saying, we don't emit carbon. We are going to do something, educate the people how to keep these plastics. We reuse them, we make poles, we do something like that. That's all. It is education. It's education that we wanted. It is not haphazard decisions that we are shutting plastics today. Then you have empty stomachs which can't feed themselves, and yet we are importing all those plastics from outside.
Okay, all right. Captain Wanderi.
Yeah, now I think, Professor, I want to thank you. Not many people may not know this, but I met you way back in 2007, and I had been sent to you by the current Minister for Health, and we had a very good discussion about some appointment, and I remember your words of wisdom, and I lived up to them, and I'm happy you advised me the way you did, and you had you would have told me to take whatever was being offered, but you decided to sit me down and give me advice. I'm always grateful, and I was happy even recently when I met you in Mombasa. Now, you've said a number of things which are very, very important. One is the issue of having in political governance what we call key performance indicators. We do not even know what we've asked our political leaders to do in public administration officials. They do not have key resort areas. The public, when a member of parliament says, I'm going to parliament to build roads, to do X, Y, Z, Professor, you know they do not. And their work is to lobby government, and that's why they use their political influence to influence policy direction and the allocation of resources. But most important, this lavish life we are funding public officials. And I gave an example, Professor, of Mr. Bitokia talked one day about a public officer who is always pushing people out of the road along Gong Road.
He actually did it again today.
And again, he did it today. You know, the arrogance of power. People who do not care. Because I say this, Professor, because I have been in public office. And I want to say something which you taught me. Because I remember you saying, people in public offices need not to close their offices. Because it's not their office. We joked about it, but you know, that office is not your office. You cannot close and expect that people can't walk in and talk to you. Now, this is something that we need, and I have liked the word you've used, the philosophy of the people we elect into office. We do not know what kind of style and what they will take into office. Now, let's go to what you said about manufacturing. It is true, and I know, because recently before I left public office, I was the chair of the East African Revenue Authority's Commissioners for Tax Investigations Capacity Building Committee, meaning that I was able to move around East Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Burundi, Rwanda, and I interacted with officials involved in tax management, in tax administration in those countries. It is true, Kenya has lost what we call the comparative national advantage. Industries and investors have moved their base, what you would call their base, from Kenya to those countries. And because we are in an East African community, the rules, the community rules of origin does allow them to move their manufacturing base from Kenya. And why has that happened? And you've used clearly, you've said that Kenya is now a distribution center instead of the manufacturing base. And anytime you export or you move manufacturing to another jurisdiction, you're simply creating employment in that jurisdiction. What is the issue in Kenya? The issue in Kenya is the cost of power. The cost of power is prohibitive. Number two, there is tax. Now, we even now have a minimum corporate tax in this country, so that whether a business is making loss, whether a business is making profit, then that business is bound to pay some tax. Because the whole issue, and Bitok, you remember what I said, that as long as the government can use ruthless and brute force to tax people, the international financial institutions and even local banks will let to the government. But then we need to ask ourselves, what does this do to our job creation? The moment we are allowing Kenya had a comparative national advantage, being the country in the frontier, so that goods leaving Mombasa, going to the hinterland countries, would land at the point of landing in Mombasa. The capital goods, that's the raw materials, would be very cheap. And Kenya had therefore incentives like manufacturing at a board, the trade remission for export office, the EPZs. But what have we done to these incentives? Professor, as you've rightly said, the moment there is aggressive taxation, the moment there is also aggressive regulation by institutions like NEMA, the National Construction Authority, the Anti-Counterfeit Authority, Kenya Bureau of Standards, and equally the Kenya Revenue Authority, what has happened in this country is that it has become impossible to do business. And we've discussed this talk here, that it requires in this country for a simple manufacturer to even manufacture food color, you need 11 licenses. Now, Professor, you've rightly said, policy shift, because an SME cannot be expected to comply with the regulatory framework in the same manner as a multinational. But this is what we've done in our country, that the tax authority requires an SME to comply with the laws in the same manner as a multinational. This is killing our own businesses. 96% of Kenyans, as you've rightly said, we have the statistics, depend on, in fact, not SME, Professor, they depend on micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. And this is the debate we should be having as a country. In fact, if I were to talk to Kenyans, especially those who intend to vote in 2022, that the focus should be, what is the person going to do to the source of livelihood for the 96% Kenyans? Anybody who is not talking about that is of no relevance to us in terms of political governance and management of public administration. And that is the debate we ought to be having. And the other debate we need to be having is the policy shift, because we cannot have NEMA, National Construction Authority, Anti-Counterfeit Authority, Weights and Measures Department, Public Health Department, Kenya Bureau of Standards, Kenya Revenue Authority, pushing SMEs and MSMEs out of business, because the statistics by, again, international donors, the Millennium Development Fund, is that SMEs in Kenya do not see their second birthday. In fact, 90% of them do not see their second birthday because of the brute regulatory force that is used against them, yet they are the ones employing 96% of the people in this country. We need a clear policy shift in this matter. Thank you, Bitok.
All right. Your comments, Dr. Adi.
Yes. One more chaos.
Yes.
I understand Africa's had a problem with money laundering. But when you bring it to SMEs, the bank asking them, where did you get 300,000 from? I don't know what to call it. Everybody knows the money launderers and where they, those who have laundered money internationally. But when you ask somebody who has been selling mitumba, that they explain, write a full page report on where you raised $500,000, this is the time we should be encouraging those people to bring money into the banking sector. And you create that, Now they would be storing that money at home. We would go back to the crime because people know people are storing money at home. At the time we have digital money, you know, I think we have lost it by having too many requirements, which are completely unnecessary.
Okay. You've talked about Kwanza City as well. So what happened to Kwanza City that time?
Well, it's coming up, but a little more slower, but it's coming up. It took longer because the National Land Commission did not understand the project. So they took a very long time to approve that land can actually be given to those who are building industry locally. I think it's going to go forward because you have very big investors now who are in the process of putting up their facilities.
You mentioned that the reason was because maybe now the administration did not understand the vision behind it. What's so difficult about administrations carrying it over? What's so difficult about having BITANGE NDEMO was a brainchild whose Kwanza City was his brainchild, still running the vision of the next government? What's so difficult about maintaining a certain order in terms of a vision? What is so difficult about maintaining BITANGE NDEMO in office to ensure that he carried the vision of Kwanza City? Why do you feel the need that every government has to come up with new people with different ideas and different ways of doing things?
Well, the flag you have, I think, is Italian.
No, it's not.
No, well, Italian flag looks, well, yeah, it's not French. That's French.
Yeah.
That's French. The Italians, the civil service and the political structure are, you can't change civil service. And what has happened is that civil service has held the economy of that country, because over the past 60 years, they have had like 50 prime ministers. So if the decision-making and other things were mostly political and the new appointments, the government would never have gone there. So if there is something you need to change in the constitution, is that you have career civil servants and you have career politicians. That way you can be able to carry the vision of the country without every time changing.
So you feel we are more political than you know, we are more political than progressive.
The BPI wants now to have ministers out of parliament. That is politicization of things. The problem Africa has, and we do have that problem, look at how we have politicized even agriculture. Maize is a political crop now. Yeah, we have destroyed ourselves. We have destroyed our staple food. You see farmers queuing at NCPP to drop their harvest there, but someone is importing contaminated maize to come and undermine the pricing locally. That's the problem of having a political class dominating even in the private sector. We must change that.
So we've turned office, public offices into reward schemes. When I get into office, I look for WANDERI. I tell them, thank you so much for being my friends. Now you are the Minister of ICT. You can pick from wherever you left it. But anyways, so there are a lot of guys who have asked about, a lot of you are asking about blockchain technology and cryptocurrency.
Cryptocurrency, whether you like it or not, is going to happen because you are beginning to see governments creating what is called central bank-backed cryptocurrencies. Why they are creating that is a strategic direction of digitizing money and creating proper traceability. And that's what I would prefer, because instead of labeling people money launderers, those people who have been doing their trade, it's very easy to know that the man was paid all the money from M-Pesa and the total to 300,000. It creates proper traceability. And the fact that the technology has shifted, everybody has understood that big financial technologies are creating greater inclusivity. We know that the studies have been done in Kenya with M-Pesa and other digital solutions. We need to lead the world in that space. Everybody came here to learn from us, but we are remaining behind in the sense that the others are developing complex cryptos and moving forward. And what has happened is that we have, instead of us joining the bandwagon, explaining the people so that they understand the investments they can make, we are saying, oh, let's wait and see what happens with other parts of the world. We are losing it. China has moved forward. US is moving forward because they are using artificial intelligence in those money. So they would understand us much more deeply than we understand ourselves. So this is where we lose, like we lost during the time of mechanization, during the time of the second industrial revolution, the third, and now the fourth is coming. We are running away from it.
We are off it. All right.
Something I would want to ask Professor.
Please.
Professor, Senegal, a country in West Africa, has manufactured a very cheap reagent to test COVID. And one of the things that is worrying me is that we have in Kenya very many institutions, KEMRI, KETRI, KEVEVAPI, you know, all these public bodies, we have researchers there. Why are we not able to harness our ability to get these scientists together and develop something, as you've said, to test for COVID? Because a COVID test being 3,000 or 4,000 in public hospitals, 8,000 to 10,000 in private hospitals is clearly prohibitive to our country. And even if we wanted to deal with the pandemic, besides the vaccine, we need to test as many people as possible so that then we can deal with the spread. Because even if we quarantine people and we are not testing, so we don't know who is positive and who is not, then we are not doing much. Why can't we? You've been in a senior position in government, far much senior than I have been. Why can't this institution be harnessed? What you would call the intellectual capabilities of the people in all those research institutions of government, including the Primate Research Institute. Why can't we harness them and get them to develop a way of testing this virus?
It is because of what we call neo-colonialism, meaning that everything we do, we have it validated by the Western world. And if they say don't use it, you don't use it. There is, as I speak to you now, a lot of Kenyans are using herbal medication, which has been approved by pharmacy and poisons, and actually getting cured with COVID. But we can't say about it. We can't speak because Britain has not come to tell us this works. And then we shout out. Yeah. There are so many areas also. This testing, if you go to Chiromo, you would get a solution from those professors there. But it is the validation mechanism which we fear that, oh, we will be criticized, we'll be doing this. We need to build confidence in our people. And then they say, look, we have done 1,000, we have done 10,000, and the results are the same. To build national confidence, it begins from the top. We also must have confidence in our people, those who are doing the research. There are so many things that are done here, and then only to be taken outside there to be announced that they work. It is unfortunate that we have not built that confidence to be able to say what we have done, what KEMRI can do, Now, some of those scientists are the ones who are making the local herbs. We call it herbs. They could be medication, and then you accept it. I suffered. My son went through hospital for COVID, and for 6 days lying in hospital. Then eventually I said, no, something must be around. The medicine the hospital was giving was remdesivir, which doesn't work anywhere. A dose is 120,000 shillings.
Wow.
So I said, no, instead of that, let's try our herbal thing. 12 hours, the guy was up. Yeah,
12 hours.
Yes, he was up and walking. And then I say, if I had gone for remdesivir because it is made in the US, I would have lost him. Yeah, it's working. There is a herbal medicine in Kenya that works, which I think even the Prime Minister said, the former Prime Minister said that it mixed some of the herbal, he's not confident to come out and say what helped me with herbal medication.
So you're waiting for the white man to come and validate and tell us, now you guys can use this.
Yeah.
There's time to be now. There's something, lastly, before you go, sir. Kenyans are happy in harms about the lockdown that has been imposed. I'm sure that you interact with Kenyans quite often, also being a teacher and all that. Do you think the strategies that you're applying, like lockdown, do you think it's working? Do you think now we have a better country because we've locked it down?
I think that Kenyans are wonderful people, but we make mistakes also. When US says that the infection rate is 2%, it comes from a random selection of the people who are tested, like Captain was saying. We don't have kits to test everybody, so that we come up with a percentage that was the people who go in Kenya, the people who go testing are the people who actually feel bad and go to test. Then someone wakes up to say that 30% of us are infected. It causes pandemonium outside the country and everything happens, then we begin to react. In statistics, for you to announce that, you would have done a random selection of people and see those who had COVID to conclude that percentage. I think we need to task our Central Bureau of Statistics to begin to do such studies, and that is what the Ministry of Health is using. Because at that percentage, and our country of 50 million, we are scaring people that we are all walking with COVID on the streets. Yeah. So there are some things which we are not doing right. We need to do it right. Those who generate those numbers need to be very careful. Otherwise, everybody would cross our borders. And yet, it is the people who were sick who went to be tested.
Okay. All right. I want to give you an opportunity to give your last remarks to speak to Kenyans. Your last remarks.
Myself?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think we are at a very critical moment. We should not be hurried. I know we have about 10 Kenyans who wants to lead us in the next government. We need to understand who they are, what, like my friend says, philosophical underpinning they are going to bring. Not just to tell us, I want to be because my ethnic group has never been, or I want to be president because of this. We need a basis under which we select or we elect somebody in the next election. And I think there is much more for us to work together as Kenyans and not along the ethnic lines. I've not seen many of those who have presented them coming out as Kenyans because they come out as a tribe passed first. And that's what they say, I have this, now we can negotiate. That is not how it works. Tell Kenyans across the country what you are going to offer the people in the days to come. And then seek broader consensus, seek, somebody who asks questions, like Kibaki used to tell us that, me, I don't understand what you are talking about. If it goes wrong, ni wewe tu. Then you knew, you knew that I have to do it right because mzee amesema ni hivyo.
So he gave you a free will. He gave you guys a free will to operate within government.
To operate, yes.
Wow.
So we actually need to begin now. Those who have presented them, what are they? What is the characteristics? We sort of understand what we need. Yeah? And forget about tribe. Forget about tribe. Because if we had rejected Kibaki, that is a Kikuyu, because Kenyatta had ruled, we would have actually lost that 10 years of progress that we had in Kenya. So forget about that and begin to look at the person and their ideological underpinning.
Okay. All right. I think Captain has something to say before you go. Amenipiga signal hapa, Captain.
Yeah, thank you, Professor, for saying it, that our people must resist ethnicity as the basis for political mobilization. Ethnicity is identity. It's for identity purposes only. It's not for determining the direction of the country. And I want to confess here that as a Kikuyu, perhaps I have suffered the most in my work in public service under fellow Kikuyus. And I have thrived when I have been working with other people, not my fellow kinsmen. Consequently, it is something that I would like to urge Kenyans, that create liaisons with people from other places. You cannot only think that people who speak your mother tongue are the only people who know things. We need to change and we need to go outside that. At the same time, as you rightly say, we are heading to a very important time of our country. The death numbers are not very nice. So the next person who is going to be in charge, the chief executive of the country, is not going to have it very easy. Because as we can see, Kenyans are rightfully, and I urge them on to question how public resources are managed and to demand political accountability and to demand results and return on investment from public officers who are appointed to do certain things in this country. Professor, everybody remembers you. We remember you because every time you spoke, you talked about the submarine cable. I mean, people, in fact, may have even changed your name to that. And not many people understood what you are talking about. But today, the reason we are even able to communicate from where you are is because of the vision that you had with the current Minister of Health. Now, this kind of vision, as you say, any person who is going to seek public office, particularly to be the chief executive, I just don't want to see tribal lords and people coming from various areas. I would in fact want, as you say, a very broad consensus, and not just broad. I want to see the set or the multiplicity of skills and what you say, the collective wisdom and intellect of the people that this person is going to work with. Because if people do not understand this, our former president, Mwai Kibaki, we took all these public officers not to say certain things, but we knew, for those of us who had that knowledge, that he had several think tanks. There are those who dealt with the political issues. There are those who dealt with economic issues. And he listened to all of them. And Professor, as you said, if somebody did not perform, it was incumbent upon him. These are the things we need to see. What this person is seeking public office. He's not going to work alone. But this is we have a situation in this country where somebody can promise things and they say, I failed because they did not give as a collective vision, you know, that this is the way I will run the country. And this is something that we need going forward. Even in the US, President Joe Biden promised to run America which looks like America. And even before he was elected, he started showing and pointing out that I may need to work with XYZ. I may need to work with XYZ. And it is true today. His cabinet is the most, what they call the most American. It has everybody. It has virtually every minority, every community represented. And this is the kind of thing we need to start seeing in Kenya and the public. And I really support even those arguments and the angst and the anger they have on the issue of loans, because it raises the debate and also induces for public officials to know that they are being called upon to be accountable to the public, not just those who are elected, but even those appointed to office.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us this morning. We really appreciate you. Because of COVID as well, we could not have you in the studio, but I'm pretty sure that next time you'll allow us to have this conversation better you'll join us in our studio. Alafu kuja utusaidie pia utuambie technology gani ambayo tunaweza weka ili tuweze kuiendeleza. But we really appreciate you as Kenyans of goodwill. We appreciate what you did for us. We appreciate your attitude towards public service. We appreciate your wisdom, and we appreciate the fact that you care more about Kenyans than yourself. And I think the biggest wisdom that we can borrow from you is that you can always begin again. I mean, that's something that's so profound for me. I read your article the other day about beginning again, all the way from being a senior public servant to going back to being a teacher, and you're good, and you're fair and pressure, and una pressure, una songa. So I think it's also a lesson for men today that you don't have to be addicted to or to get the trappings of where you've served before, or the trappings of progress, or none of it. You can always begin from where you left it. So I think that's wisdom that we need to borrow from you, and we need to have these conversations more, especially as you talk to the men. Wanderi, what are you saying?
Yes, Professor, I want to thank you again for the nugget of wisdom that we were sharing around the other day. That you said that you will drive a matatu if you have to, and I really appreciate, because you said that what brings the food to the table is what you will do. And when you said, Professor, you may not understand the impact, but we debated you because it means that you are telling Kenyans, even those with bachelor's degree, diplomas, master's degree, and PhD, to retire their egos and do that which can change their livelihoods, their own livelihoods, and the livelihoods of others. Thank you, Professor, for that kind of knowledge.
Why I said that, as a student in the US, I did everything. I washed toilets.
Wow.
I washed floors. I drove trucks. But I am here, and I am the same person. If I had refused to wash toilets to pay my fees, I would not be here. It doesn't stick with you. Nobody, even if you told me today that you are a toilet cleaner, I would smile because I did it.
And you say, we thank God because we don't look like what we've been through. I think that's the most great thing we can have. But thank you so much, Dr. Ari, for joining us, Professor, for joining us. We hope to have coffee with you soon. Uliniambia ungeza uwezi tembea sana kwa sababu ya moja hapa moja mbili, lakini I hope you're going to give us an opportunity to sit with you and get to actually absorb the wisdom directly from the source. Until then, we really appreciate you and to wish you a very blessed day. All right, asante sana. Daktari Ojwang on the line, how are you? Ojwang?
I'm fine. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir. Pole, tumekuweka kwa laini sana.
No problem. This is unparalleled panel.
Mm-hmm.
It has actually exceeded my expectation, and I want to thank the contributors.
What expectations did you have, Joy?
Very high, but this is even too high.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe just as a way of comment, I followed the discussion, and I like what Captain Wandera saw, and even what Professor is saying. But my challenge is Captain Wandera cannot see beyond the national leader responsibility. Captain Wandera cannot see the embedded inequality in the international structure that almost everybody can now see. That even Magufuli easily raised. So Magufuli ran from it, but at the same time, that does not excuse this international system. Yes, we can, we say in my vernacular, when a goose eats chicken, you blame the goose, you blame the chicken. The chicken might have wandered so far, but the goose who is waiting to eat the chicken is also culpable to some extent. So, but Captain Wandera cannot see the problem with the goose, all he sees the problem with the chicken. The unequal structure embedded in the international system, as he's talking of all these SMEs, all these regulations that people cannot be innovative, are part of World Trade Organization and the TRIPS, the trade-related intellectual property treaty that Kenya signed. All these are part of the international system that protect intellectual property from every member state, and Kenya is a member state. So yes, we can talk of leadership. Yes, we can talk of what our parliament can do. But Article 2.4 says that the international law is part of Kenya's law automatically. And so if we don't live in Ireland, and we are embedded into the structures that exploit us, then he should also, as he's talking of what we can do locally, be able to say that why should World Bank be about PR and not in essence doing the right thing? And we have seen a number of African leaders disagreeing with them. So we cannot continue sanitizing or saying, oh, that is trade, oh, that is business, oh, they are a bank, they're doing what a bank does. Even in Kenya, we are trying to regulate what a bank does because they are supposed to serve the people. And so I'm encouraging him to really also, as he thinks of our internal structure and inequity, to see how much they are embedded and the product of the skewed international world monetary system. And when IMF and World Bank have been studying, and I teach law and development from the 60s, the fourth wave of law and development, their structures have been imposing all this. The protection of intellectual property was one of the conditions for IMF and World Bank laws. The protection of the liberalization of trade, for example, to an extent that you don't protect or you are embedded into the global system that favors strong country and does not favor a small country. So that is one. I'm encouraging him to also look beyond just the national. But secondly, I've even looked at the international law. Are you still there, Bitok?
I'm here. Can you hear, sir? I'm here.
All right. I've looked under the international law. To what extent is there legitimacy in this debt? Because there is now a doctrine called fake debt, where leaders who don't have legitimacy might go and accrue debt, and there is a big debate whether those debts should be individual debts or for the country.
Yes.
But beyond that, the actual corruption of Africa has now moved from the money that people take literally to fake projects. So somebody design a project, and you are asking why people shift from the vision that was there to another, because I want to negotiate and make my own money. Because I want to come with projects that I want to eat from. And so if I go with what Kibaki was doing, those projects have been eaten on. The overhead cost and the negotiation is that.
You cannot eat afresh.
Yes, I come with novel projects, and I come with my IMF deals, and I come with projects that the primary purpose is to siphon money. So when you even ask where is corruption, forget the money that has been stolen, or whatever has been stolen in Kenya. The whole project is a scandal. It wasn't meant to help. It is the wrong project, as we have told us in your show's evidence. That, for example, the SGR big project Why will you take all that money and put it in a project that is or white elephant, so to speak, and ignore? Why see the squirrel and not see the elephant? No, because I want to eat in that project. So the actual corruption starts with going for projects that are my cash cows and vision that farms me and not the country, and I milk them. But I really can't emphasize that the day Africa, even within international law, we have come with third world approach to international law. If we only talk of what happened under the hill as they fall, and we say, oh my goodness, leadership, Africa leadership, and we don't look beyond, as Captain is saying, the embedded international structures that are designed to exploit, that Magufuli called by name. And we keep saying they are good in PR. Why? Of course, every good business is good in PR. Think about it. The very big polluters of the environment are the same people who put a container there and say we recycle and we are green beaches. They cannot be the problem and the solution at the same time. And I like what Professor said as I conclude. Sorry for hogging your show.
No, it's okay.
As I conclude, you know, even the issue of conservation. Do you know, and listen to Dr. Gada and people who are in conservation, a lot of money, unusual money coming in the name of conservation, protecting animals. Do you know the best way to grab land in Kenya now is in the name of conservation? I have 2 cheetah in my farm, and therefore you just in the name of conservation you get away with anything, and it is international to local. You don't see Wazungu coming to help us with the car hijacking problem or with child trafficking. Why conservation? Because they take our prime land, they take 50 acres and say, okay, now here I have 2 cheetahs, I'm conserving it, and they get a part. Until our leader, including Captain here, start seeing beyond the inequality in the system that looks so natural, that looks so embedded, that our schools perpetrate and teach, we will not shake anything. Professor Bitemo told us universities left through first industrial revolution, the second industrial. We are now in the fourth industrial revolution. Where
they are still sleeping.
We are sleeping, and that is a very good challenge that he has given us. And I think it is true that we are not preparing Africa, whether Africa needs rebaptism or renaissance, but it starts from thinking beyond the box. There is no way a serious brain like Captain can simply talk of what our leaders can do, but see nothing wrong with what Bretton Woods and those international structures and simply dismiss it as they're doing what they're doing. It's business. Which kind of business? You are exploiting. They are the ones running this country. Do you know how many policies and how many regulatory frameworks as they embedded the law and institutions? Much of the funding from IDA law and whatever is in legal process, making laws, and Kenya have a plethora of laws. It is on making institutions that regulate, I don't know, IT and regulate copyright and whatever. Those are international systems. So let him not just see the squirrel, but see the elephant in the room. Bitok.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Is he still on?
He's there. He's there. You can talk to him.
Daktari, how are you?
I'm fine, Captain.
Yeah, first, you know, I have listened to you, and yes, we learn every day. At the same time, I know you're one of the people I want to see getting a good political seat in 2022. We need your brain, whether you vie for governor, senator, or member of the National Assembly. If I was from your home area, I would have voted for you because I've listened.
Politics is my ex.
Yeah.
I'm not going back there.
No. We need you.
You are a bitter ex.
No, we need you.
I'm not going for it.
We need you. We need your brain in that area. Now, I've listened to you, and I really take that. But I also want to tell you this, Daktari.
Yes,
that when it comes to protecting our national interest, when our politicians are well informed, they take the proper decision. And I want to give you an example. There is the International Treaty on the Sale and of Arms, the UN Treaty.
Small arms.
Yes, Kenya has never ratified nor signed that treaty. And you know why, Dr. Because it has reported...
We are at traffic.
Yes, we are a frontier country. And if we sign that treaty or ratify it, then we impose on ourselves reporting obligations, so that we have to report what passes through our territory to the hinterland. And we have South Sudan, we have now Ethiopia, we have now Central African Republic, Congo, Burundi, Rwanda, which may need to use our territory to move such equipment. So we will not ratify. Now, you will agree with me, Daktari, that some of the time, and as you heard Professor say, we have members of parliament who meet in committees and we don't see any result. Remember, for any treaty, even under Article 24 to be ratified, it has to be ratified by our National Assembly. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes,
sir. And this is my real focus, that even as you say, I'm looking at the chicken, that if we raise the bar, we raise the bar so that members of parliament know they live up to this, that they know that you're not just being elected into office to feed mkubwa na kuitwa mheshimiwa. Please do something for the public. Because some of us, in a certain way, we have fought the ratification and the Kenya becoming a signatory of that treaty, because we know the security implications for our country. Consequently, this is why I say people like you should not shy away from politics, because it means then that we can be assured that if you go there, if you are in a place where you are engaged in political governance, you will engage in a lot of review of whatever is being brought into the country. And I agree with you that the international system has never favored Africa. In fact, Daktari, also the ACP-EU treaties, which I was introduced to into how they work by the late Professor Justice Otieno Odek. I used to be his research assistant at one point. And that is, I have an understanding that system is basically rigged against African countries and the countries in the Southern Hemisphere. But Daktari, the reason why it is rigged is because these people know that they can influence and manipulate the people who get into office. Yes. Now, you've seen intellectuals. Let me just say one thing. I like Kisumu as a city, and I know you know it is changing the face of Kisumu. And I used to tell a lot of my colleagues anytime I went to Kisumu that there are certain things we need to see in this city. It's the regional hub. It is actually the proper, it should be the capital for East Africa, because it's at the center. And I remember telling people that one day there will be a governor or a leader in Kisumu who will close his eyes and ensure that the shoreline of the lake is going to be used to develop, or to create incentives for investment. I'm actually happy that Professor Nyong'o, who doesn't talk too much, is doing something. You get. He may not be 100%, but he's doing something about it. The city is very clean. The skyline is looking promising. And this is why, Daktari, when you say...
Cabro economics.
Yes.
Cabro economics. With Cabro everywhere.
Now, either way, is the place is looking clean, it's hospitable. And this, you see, if we had more people, we had more intellectuals, people who know that there is something they can give to the people back, perhaps we would be moving forward. People who know that when they go to negotiate and review international treaties, they should do it for the benefit of the country, so that we do not just ratify.
A good example,
Yes, you see the UK treaty recently, and I saw, and I was happy even with the speaker's ruling. I really followed it because the speaker was very clear, even on the public participation. You cannot ask the public to participate when they haven't seen the contents and all the components of the treaty. This is the kind of debate. This is why I would want us to raise the bar. But I have listened to you, and I will engage more in terms of even what the international system does to Africa. But I still urge you, although you gave a good rendition of how it happened to you during the nominations, you must not shy away from public politics and public governance.
No, but I am in governance by calling and urging this good leadership. But you see,
yes,
I'm a very honest guy, and I found that right now, if you look at the media, and that's why we really support BITANGE in what he's doing here. When you look at the media everywhere, the main talk now is the president anointing his successor. It is anti-constitutional. We know what the Constitution says. But every headline is about, oh my goodness, he's a master chess player. Oh my goodness, now he's going to anoint so-and-so. And so the way we live and order our lives and the law are no rule of law. Then we get shocked when we find personalization of power. Because what you are describing is personalization of power that has even made Parliament impotent, of course, by their conscience and their willingness. So our issue of good governance is a priority, and you have a scar to show for this. You have been very steadfast. It is refreshing completely. And I think wherever we find ourselves, brother, this is our country. I like what Ndemo said. I also stayed in the U.S. for 14 years. Some of us came back here. We had law firms in the U.S., but we came because we really believed in our country and believed in what we can do for that country. We shall squeeze each other here. Nobody is going to leave any space for anybody. And so I thank you, Captain, for that encouragement. Asante.
Karibu sana. Asante sana. Thank you so much, Daktari, for joining us this morning. All right. Thank you. Captain.
Yes.
I want to give you your last comments. Alafu tukafunge.
Yes. My last comment is to our viewers, our listeners, that thank you very much for patronizing this media house. We enjoy and we like your patronage, because if you do not listen to us, then we will not find the reason to come. At the same time, I request all Kenyans to love this country, to love each other, to treat each other humanely and kindly, and to really know that a human being has what you call the basic tenets of humanity. Whether a man or a woman, let's respect each other. Let's not see as if we are having a fight between the men and women. Let's not promote violence, whether at home or in places of work. Let's just live peacefully and condemn any person who wants to talk about violating another person's rights. We need to condemn them. And we need to remember that your freedom as an individual ends where the rights of the other person begin. So do not hurt other people. And let's reflect upon the things happening in our country, and let's think beyond our villages. Let's think beyond our individual interests and look into the future. If I voted in the first election beyond 20 years ago, perhaps I did not make decisions that I thought would impact the young people today. And so I urge even the young people who will be voting for the first time to think about the impact of their decision or the generation that will come 10 or 20 years after them. Thank you, Bito.
Okay. Asante sana, Captain, for coming in. Also, thank you the tacklers who have been with us this morning. Asante sana, Daktari Professor BITANGE NDEMO. Najua saizi anaitwa Professor, pole sana. Professor BITANGE NDEMO. And pia Daktari Ojuang was joined us this morning on call. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. The tacklers who have been watching us, we really appreciate that you've been sharing and you've kept conversations going. This circle could never be without you. We appreciate your support and your patronage, as Captain Wanderi has said, and we wish to continue growing this platform together. Let's keep having this conversations. Even after you log out, you can also look us, you can also check us up on YouTube, Gerald BITANGE, Twitter, #TheTackle, or at Gerald BITANGE. Alafu kimbia pale YouTube na Facebook. Unatuana tupo hapa. It's a pleasure to have you. We hope to see you again tomorrow on Wednesday. Tunaendelea na siasa, alafu tunajua Kenya itakuwa vipi. It's been a pleasure having you. This is a Tackle, and Tackle ends now. We love you. Bye bye and have a great day.